This issue with Uber Eats, I could see affecting a lot of Uber Eats drivers, especially next year. And that is the significant price increases. This article is titled, Redditors Say They're Done with Uber Eats Over Ridiculous Fees and Price Hikes. They have no regrets not ordering anymore. So I'm going down here, and this is very interesting. I know this is more on the consumer side, right, of people using Uber Eats. But remember, the way people use Uber Eats, Uber, Lyft, etc., of course, affects rideshare drivers and delivery drivers. It says right here that a Reddit user has taken to the platform to post Uber Eats receipts of identical orders from now and 2 years ago, which show significant price increases on the same menu items. Now, as we all know, prices of everything has increased. Inflation, the cost of food and just day-to-day living, bills, etc., has gone up. We all know this, so I will say it does make some sense that from 2 years ago, things might be a little bit cheaper, but this is pretty insane. So he's talking about this order right here that, like, say one item on the order cost $7 originally, now costs $10. Another item which cost $8 previously now costs $12.50. And going down here, and this is the big one, is that a couple years ago, that the total they would pay for this one order came to $36.46. Now, though, it's $48.70, a $12.24 increase, or an increase by 33.6%. That is a huge hike. I mean, let's be honest. If, let's say, you're ordering the same thing that you, let's say, ordered 2 years ago on Uber Eats, and now it's $12.24 more expensive, or 33.6% more expensive, that's a pretty big hike. And I got to be honest, I do think, I hate to say it because I do use Uber Eats once in a while. Things have gotten pretty ridiculous, and they do touch upon it in this article. And I know for some Uber Eats drivers, they're probably like, well, how does this affect me, right? I don't use Uber Eats. But I promise you, these kind of things that Uber's doing when it comes to Uber Eats has a huge kind of trickle effect on how much money Uber Eats drivers are making, especially with tips, which is something I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Going down here, a lot of people in the comments are kind of saying the same thing. I know a lot of people, my friends, have kind of said this too. I've even said this. It's getting just ridiculous when it comes to ordering delivery. This one person said, I've ordered a handful of times for special occasions, but the general idea of paying restaurant prices to eat at home never really made sense to me as a regular thing. And I do agree with that. However, there are some people who order Uber Eats almost daily, but this is another big thing too. Some added that even with promotional discounts, delivery services are still too expensive. Buy one, get one free is ridiculous at some places. They literally just double the price. This is something I have noticed, and I'm going to be honest, it's tough. I don't necessarily blame restaurants for this because restaurants do get, a big portion of their earnings is sent to Uber. So I think a lot of restaurants in this position, and again, this is pretty much Uber's fault, I feel like, they kind of have to do what they can, right? So it makes sense. So let's say they have buy one, get one free, and I'm making this up. Let's say it's a $5 burrito. What they'll do is just say buy one, get one free, and they'll charge you $10 for the burrito. So in your mind, you're like, oh, $10 for the burrito. I get 2 burritos for $10. But in actuality, they typically charge $5 for the burrito. So it's kind of like a little math hack, if that's the right word that they're using to make it seem like you're getting a deal. But this is what restaurants have to do. As you can see here, or they'll make it $30 for buy one, get one free when each item is $10.99, like I just said. And then so there is some deals, obviously some restaurants do, whether it's a free delivery, you get a free item if you spend $20. If you spend a certain amount, you get 50% off. There's buy one, get one free, but like they say right here, other users said the fees, delivery and service fees, eat away at the discount you might find, right? Even with these discounts, the fees end up making it about the same price. And this is something I have noticed too, where if I order Uber Eats and they have some crazy promotion going on, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, this is a good promotion. I'm saving $5 or $10. But then the fees and everything are $10. So they're more expensive. So either way, it's almost like, I kind of look at this as a dealership where you're going to buy a car and all the kind of car salesman does is switch around the numbers to make it seem like you're getting a better deal because of this, and this. But they're just moving stuff around using some kind of math tricks, so to speak, to make you think like you're getting a deal when in reality or not. It's so dumb. I haven't ordered anything using Uber Eats for years now. I just get takeout if anything. And I hate to say it, I kind of agree. I mean, granted, we all know, I think getting delivery is kind of like as a commodity, right? It's something that you could use, because like say you get home, you're tired, you're like, all right, I don't feel like going out and picking something up. But, there are a lot of people who maybe rely on things like Uber Eats or Postmates or DoorDash. Granted, this is just about Uber Eats, but I've noticed this with all the platforms that some people, like say, if they're elderly or disabled, and it's very unfortunate that people who use and pretty much rely on Uber Eats, that things are now way more expensive. There's another thing too, and I feel like this should be common knowledge in case you don't know, but this one user pointed out, although I feel like this is common knowledge, that restaurants often list more expensive prices in the app, using one example about a sandwich going for $14.50, but costing only $11.47 in the store. Now, again, this is because of the cut that Uber takes, that a lot of restaurants are saying, well, you know what? I just have to charge you more because it's kind of coming out of my own pocket, and restaurants are being kind of like sliced thin with their already super thin margins, right? So it's super tricky. Another thing too, I will say as a side note, I don't think they mentioned this in the article, is the amount of food you get. I know, like, if I order Chipotle and I get a Chipotle bowl through delivery, I almost always get less than what I would get if I went to the store or if I went to Chipotle itself. I think, if anything, being honest, most of the time, I almost get half. If I go to the store, I use all these different Chipotle hacks. I've actually done a video about it. I'll post it in the description in case you're curious to watch my Chipotle hacks video. But I'll get double in the store what I'll get through delivery, to the point where, like, there's been sometimes I get the delivery bag from Chipotle and I go to pick it up and I'm like, why does it feel so light? And then I open it up and I'm like, it's half the burrito bowl. Like, but anyway, the fee, like I said before, like I was just saying, the fees delivery apps charge the restaurant, which are sometimes high as 30%, are often passed right back to the customer, resulting in a noticeable markup on many menu items, right? And as they stated right here, restaurants have thin margins as it is, so eventually it gets passed on to the customer, which would explain why the same item is priced differently on Uber Eats than in the restaurants itself. Now, you may be wondering, for all my Uber Eats drivers out there, for all my delivery drivers, you may be wondering, well, okay, Mark, that makes sense, but how does that affect me? Like, why does the pricing or the increase of prices affect me? And there's a couple different reasons. One is kind of Captain Obvious here, but this is important. Remember, the only reason that people can do delivery driving, the only reason people can drive as an Uber Eats driver and do delivery for Uber Eats is because people are using it. And as you can imagine, if prices continue to increase and Uber just keeps making things more and more expensive and continues making it harder for restaurants just to make ends meet, one, a lot of restaurants might pull out of Uber Eats, and two, it creates kind of a trickle effect, like I said, that you might get less orders. As opposed to, like, say, you turning on the app and being super quick for you to just, pick up one thing, you drop it off, you pick up another one, you kind of do that kind of overlapping technique a lot of delivery drivers and rideshare drivers do. You might not be able to do that. You could turn on the app, and like I say, if not a lot of people are ordering Uber Eats, that could cause an issue, especially as things get more and more expensive. I think a lot of people now are saying, well, why order Uber Eats? It's too expensive. We know the prices are super inflated. There's an insane amount of, I've seen memes about this of like delivery fee, and then you have the service fee, and then you have the special Joe Schmo fee, and then you have the California fee, and there's all these fees. You're like, wait, I'm ordering a $15 burger, for example. How'd it come to $35? Where'd the extra $20 come from, right? And so for a lot of people, they're ordering Uber Eats less potentially. And I just did a video yesterday talking about how a big issue in 2024 is there being too many rideshare drivers, right? Too many people on the road. Well, if you think about it, that also can trickle into Uber Eats, because for a lot of people, in case you don't know, the barrier for Uber Eats is lower than Uber and Lyft. Uber, typically the age or the minimum age requirement is 21. For Lyft is 25. So that alone there, if let's say you're in college, you're going to drive for Uber Eats, which means if there's more Uber and Lyft drivers on the road in 2024, and statistically speaking, that's what we're seeing happening, there's probably going to be even more delivery drivers being on the road. And this is something I've not done a video about. I plan to do some videos about this, because in addition to the minimum requirements when it comes to your vehicle as well. For example, if you have a two-door vehicle, you cannot drive for Uber and Lyft, but you can drive for Uber Eats. That's just, a couple examples I'm giving you, it's a lot easier to become a delivery driver than it is to become a rideshare driver. And there's pros and cons to both, right? I've done some videos about this, where some people love rideshare driving and hate delivery and vice versa. For me, I'm not going to lie. I've done one ride. I'm not exaggerating. One ride, or if I call it one ride or drive, I know what the term would be. One delivery on Uber Eats. I hated it. The idea of going to the restaurant, parking my car, throwing on the hazards, being like, I hope I'm not going to get ticketed or something happening. Running into the restaurant, making sure I grab the right order, making sure I don't forget like their drink or their side, bringing it in my car, dropping it off to the person's place. Granted, I did one order. It took me, I think, like between 10, I'd say like 12 minutes, and I got paid, I think it was like $8.60. So I was like, okay, if I did that 5 more times, it's about 30 or 35 an hour, and that was on a Friday, like a Friday evening or Friday night. And I was like, actually, that's not bad. That's actually more, I think, that I'd make typically. I mean, granted, it depends, right, on a bunch of metrics. Not my thing, though. But I know a lot of people do like delivery driving. They're like, hey, I don't have to worry about people being in my car. I don't have to worry about having a conversation with someone that I don't really care about. Like say you're like, look, I'd rather just throw on music, throw on a podcast. I drive. I don't have to deal with anybody. If my car is messy, who cares? Another big advantage as well, being an Uber Eats driver, and I've seen this a lot more as time has gone on, and that is you can have somebody with you. In case you don't know, you're allowed to have somebody with you when you drive for Uber Eats. You cannot, as you can imagine, do that with Uber or Lyft. Although there's been a couple times where I got an Uber or Lyft and there's already someone there and it's like a friend. I'm like, well, what would you do if there was 4 people? Because with Uber and Lyft, you're allowed to have 3 people in the back, one sitting shotgun and one sitting up front. What would they do? So I don't know. But when it comes to Uber Eats, I'd say if anything, it's about 50-50. 50% of the time when I order Uber Eats, and like I say, I go outside because I like to meet them outside. I think it makes it a lot easier than having to come inside and everything. 50% of the time, it's just one person. The other 50% is usually a couple people, and they're just kind of hanging out, talking. I don't know how they work out the math or the money, but it's like, that's actually not a bad deal. You have 2 people doing it. You can hang out with your friend or however you want to do it, right? So anyway, though, digressing back to this video, with all the people liking delivery driving, and with there being more and more delivery drivers on the road, if people are looking at Uber Eats just as so much more expensive, that's going to make a lot less people ordering Uber Eats. And if there's more drivers on the road, it may be more difficult to get deliveries. And if you think about it, when it comes to Uber and Lyft, it's a little different. I think most people, myself included, look at Uber and Lyft as something you kind of have to do, right? Like, I mean, if you, let's say, need to get to and from work, and you don't have a car, there's not like a subway or a bus or whatever, you use Uber and Lyft. When it comes to, let's say, a Friday night and you're going out, let's say, drinking with your friends, you use Uber and Lyft because you don't want to worry about drinking and driving. You look at it as something you kind of like have to use. Like you have to take Ubers and Lyfts. With Uber Eats, I think for a lot of people, they're like, well, yeah, I could walk to the grocery store. I could go somewhere and get food. I could go pick it up or whatever, but I don't feel like doing that. I've had a long day. So it's more something that like is, like I said, a commodity or something you could kind of use because you're like, you know what? I don't feel like cooking tonight. I don't feel like doing dishes. I think there's an app in Canada called Skip the Dishes. I remember I used it in Vancouver, which is a great name, by the way, right? I don't feel like doing dishes. I want to skip the dishes. I'm going to order delivery. And I think that's a big benefit. So a lot of people are saying, well, if it's getting so overpriced and I don't have to use it, you know what? I'm just not going to use it ever again. The less people that order, the less orders are on the table for all these delivery drivers. And if they all increase in 2024, that's going to be an issue. The second big thing, the second big reason why this affects a lot of delivery drivers is actually tips. Now, as we all know, tips, I've done a bunch of videos about this. Tipping culture has gotten very interesting, I think, especially here in America and here in the States. But what's interesting, though, and I've said this before in other videos, Uber Eats, Postmates, DoorDash, basically delivery in general, is it's really the only service I could think of, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'd have to think about this, where you tip before the service takes place, right? When it comes to bartending, I've said this before, I'm a former bartender. When it comes to bartending, well, you get that tip or whatever at the end of your bartending thing, right? When they close out their tab, you get the tip. When it comes to, like, say, tipping your massage therapist, right, as you typically do. When it comes to, say, tipping your waiter or waitress, of course. When it comes to most service industries, almost all of them, Rideshare driving too, Uber and Lyft, you always tip after, right? Because let's be honest, and we all know this, there are really, really good Uber Eats drivers, and there are really, really bad Uber Eats drivers. I know, I will say this, I think it's always important to look at things on both sides, because there's been some times I ordered Uber Eats, the driver's there, super prompt, delivered everything, perfect, no issue there. And sometimes it's the restaurant's fault, sometimes it's other different parties' fault. But there's been other times where I ordered something and I ordered a milkshake, and the milkshake was like $8 or something, and I'm like, all right, whatever, I'm just, and they deliver it, and then I'm like, oh wait, they leave, I open the bag, and I'm like, wait, where's the milkshake? And I call him, and I'm like, hey man, where's my milkshake? And the guy's like, oh, sorry man, it's actually my front console, but I'm already on the road, and I'm already going to someone else's house. I'm like, well, I need the milkshake. He goes, well, sorry man, maybe contact Uber. And now, of course, that's on him. He had the milkshake in his front console. He forgot it. Maybe he drank it. Who knows, right? And they forgot to drop it off, right? So I will say, when it comes to tipping, and I know a lot of delivery drivers don't like to hear this, but remember, it is the only industry that you tip beforehand, and there's a lot of bad drivers out there, right? There's a lot of bad drivers that I don't think maybe deserve a higher enough tip if they mess up or if they screw something up. I know some delivery drivers have tipped over the bag by accident or screwed up the entire order. And in my mind, if I'm doing a delivery and I screw up the delivery and it's on me, I shouldn't get a big enough tip. I believe in that. Same thing with bartending. If I'm bartending and I screw something up on somebody's order and they don't tip me as well, I think that's on me because I messed up, and it is the customer service industry. Now, some people may agree with me, some people disagree. But anyway, going back to the point of this though, the bigger price increase puts a unique thing on how much people are willing to tip. Now, use an example. I talked about this yesterday, and I still cannot believe this. This was a month ago. I'm not going to mention the place's name because I'm not trying to call them out. I was with somebody, and I went to order 2 shots of vodka, right? The shots of vodka, in case you're curious, was New Amsterdam. It was it's well vodka, basically, because I'm like, whatever. To me, vodka's vodka and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, I'll just get 2 shots. It came to $40. It was $20 a shot. And in case you don't know about alcohol prices, one bottle of New Amsterdam, which is considered a low shelf vodka or a cheap vodka, is $15. It was more expensive for a shot of vodka than if I bought that bottle at a store. Now, granted, this is true when it comes to drink prices. We all know you always pay a little bit more, right? Always, almost, for a drink when you go to the bar, or let's say, especially if you're at a concert or whatever. And I have no problem spending $20 if it's actually at a craft bar. There's one great place here in LA, by the way. Got to give them a shout out, called Grain. Amazing bar. For $20, they'll make you this incredibly unique craft cocktail with this crazy mixology. Sometimes they do some bar flaring as well. They kind of flip stuff around or do crazy tricks or whatever. There's all these unique elements they add into it, and rare liquors and spice. So that, to me, I have no problem spending $20 because it's a unique experience. But $20 for a shot of New Amsterdam vodka, in this case $40 now because I got 2, I'm like, this is ridiculous. And for me, I've always been a big tipper, right? Because I'm a former bartender and I used to drive for Lyft and Uber and everything. I always tip at least 20%. If they go above and beyond, I'll tip them more. But the standard is typically 20%, right? And in that case, I'm being okay, I'm about to tip $8 for a $40 order, right? So it's coming to $48. My tip is half the price of one bottle of New Amsterdam at the store. And I'm like, at that point, I almost wasn't going to tip them big. I almost was going to give them $4, right? $2 for each shot, or $4 total, or maybe $5. But I was like, no, I ordered it. I didn't ask him the price. I should have, right? But I didn't want to be that guy being like, hey, how much does it cost, right? I ordered it. It came to $48 with everything included of the price of the 2 shots plus the tip, $48. And I was thinking, if I was hesitant to tip $8, if I was hesitant to tip 20% on this, that means a lot of other people probably maybe would not even leave a tip, or zero them, which is kind of a slang term when you just don't tip at all, or maybe only give them a couple bucks. And as you can imagine, that hurts the bartender, right? If the shots were say, I think for most people, if the shots were say $10 each, people might tip $5 or $6. So I think people, if anything, there becomes probably a point. I think in psychology called the JND, the just noticeable difference. I think there's a point where people are almost more likely, to tip you less because it's so expensive. They're like, I'm paying this much for this. I'm not going to tip them that much, as opposed to say if it was a reasonable price, people would tip you more, right? So this is less money of a tip for you. And as we know, when it comes to delivery drivers, this is an issue. So now bring it back full circle to this article. If things get more and more expensive, there's a lot of people out there who are saying, look, if I'm paying, and let's say in that case, I'm just making things up, $40 for a meal that typically was $30 For $30, you give them a 20% tip, boom, $36. $30 for the meal, you give them $6 tip, boom. And if it's $40 now, and let's say, kind of guess similar math to that alcohol case, I have to tip them $8. Well, I can see a lot of people saying, wait, it's $10 more? How's it $10 more for the same order when I just ordered this? If it's $10 more, there's no way I'm going to give them an $8 tip. People get frustrated and they start tipping less. And this creates a vicious cycle of people then saying, well, I'm not going to tip them that much for a $40 order when it's only $30 and things are already overpriced. No way. And then for the delivery drivers, they're like, this person barely tipped me. And of course, delivery drivers deserve at least 20%. We all know this. So then the delivery driver gets super frustrated and gets mad, then gives them their order. They're super, super mad. They're like, you know what? I'm done with delivery driving. This is super frustrating. I'm not getting a good tip. And it becomes this chicken before the egg thing. And like I said, although yes, delivery driving is the only instance that you tip before the thing takes place. And there are, I know it sounds kind of bad to say, but there are bad delivery drivers out there. Most of them are good. Most delivery drivers are excellent and deserve high tips. And so this is a huge issue when you're factoring all this tipping stuff. And then one last kind of like subtle but big thing I've noticed on Uber Eats with all this into play is the way Uber reacts to certain situations. What I mean is, let's say you order something and you order, let's say, burger, fries, and milkshake. The burger and fries get there, you open it, no milkshake. You call the delivery driver like, hey, where's my milkshake? And they're like, I don't know. The restaurant never gave me a milkshake. Now, it's not on the delivery driver. You tip them, you paid and everything. It's actually on the restaurant. So say you call the restaurant, they're like, oh, we forgot to make it. We forgot to give it to them. Well, as you can imagine, you paid for a product. That product was not delivered, so you're owed money, right? I mean, why would you pay for something if you're not going to get it? Now, if I order something on Amazon, for example, and I get half my order, I can return it, get my money back, or I get a full refund. Same thing with almost every other industry out there. And this is the way it used to be when it comes to Uber Eats. I order something, something's messed up, like I said with the milkshake example, where it's not the driver's fault, it's more on the restaurant. Well, of course, I should get a refund. And they used to do that. However, though, now I've noticed this happened to me a few times. So I get an order, something's forgotten, and it's not the driver's fault. Or maybe it is. Or I get an order and something's clearly wrong with the food. Not that just is cold, which can happen sometimes. I just have to heat it back up. Kind of frustrating, but no big deal. That's life. But let's say something seems really wrong with the order. I contact Uber and I say, hey, just so you know, I never received my milkshake. I just want some money back for it. Whether it's, in cash, whether it's a refund to my credit card, whether it's an Uber Eats credit or Uber credit or Uber Cash, right? So I can use that in the future. And there's been times, I'd say in the past few times this has happened, Uber gets back to me and they say, hey, sorry, we reviewed your claim. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do. We're sorry about that. Thank you for choosing Uber. And I'm like, wait, so I didn't get the thing that I ordered. I spent $8, for example, on this milkshake. It's not my fault that I didn't get it. I am asking just for $8 back of credit or something. And you're saying, no, sorry, there's nothing we can do. This is something I've seen happen a lot more. And I've seen even online. This kind of goes right up there with the price issue that Uber's not giving you back what you deserve. If I pay money for something, I'm deserved what I paid money for, right? This makes sense. And so I think that is a huge issue with Uber now, with a lot of people getting frustrated that one, the price increases and everything, but then two, a lot of people are saying, wait, so things are getting more expensive, I'm paying more money than before, and yet if something goes wrong, I'm now not even gonna get my money back. Like it's kind of a gamble where I'm rolling the dice where if something is not included in my order, or if I get the wrong order, which has happened to me before, and I go to get my money back because I didn't get what I ordered, I'm now just, SOL, right? Like I'm now like sugar honey iced tea out of luck. Super, super, super frustrating. So with all these things being considered, I know a bit of a long video, but I really want to go in depth about all these different points. One, the fact that prices are being increased, which means a lot of people might not order Uber Eats. Two, the fact that there's now going to be more, statistically speaking, as things are looking, there's probably going to be more delivery drivers on the road. Three, with the increase of pricing and the issue that comes into play with tipping, of people probably less likely to tip you as you deserve because the prices are so ridiculous that 20% of something is a lot more now than 20% of, let's say, a lower price. And then lastly, four, Uber just not giving the money back to customers and consumers using the product. I don't know, delivery driving is getting to the point now where it's reaching a threshold for a lot of people using it that they're like, why order? And like I said, if there's less and less orders now coming out because of these insane price increases, and more drivers are on the road looking to do delivery driving to make ends meet, put food on the table and bills, this is not a good spread and not a good gap. It's going to be a bit of an issue next year.